In this one, what we need to do is work out how we're going to create our schema before each test is run. The class we need is called Schema tool, which can be found in our vendors folder, and it's under Doctrine, ORM, Tools, and it's called Schema tool. The actual method that we need is called Update Schema. Let's have a read of what this does.
Choose high definition for the best viewing experience, and if you'd like to join a growing group of software developers and take your skills to a new level, all you need to do is subscribe, click the little notification icon, and welcome.
And so it says it updates the schema of the given classes by comparing the class metadata instances to the current database schema. And it has one mandatory argument, which is our metadata classes, and then it has a save mode, which we won't need to touch. Before we go any further, let's just go and look at the constructor, and you will see that in the constructor we need to pass an entity manager interface, so we can pass in our entity manager. What I'm going to do with this is build a class around this which provides it with the metadata that it requires, and provides it with the entity manager which we obtained in the previous recording. And so I'd like to call that class something which describes pretty much what it does, and I will just call this schema loader, and we'll give it one static method called load, because I don't think we need to be creating an instance of anything. I think it'll only ever have one responsibility. We won't need to test its methods or anything like that. We'll know if our tests are working that it is working. So let's call this schema loader, and then we'll just give it one method called load. And so if you recall, we needed to pass it an entity manager, so we shall do that. And then let's actually go and create this. We'll create it in the same namespace, so in tests, new class, and we'll just call this schema loader. Okay, and it's given it the namespace already, so make sure if you're using a different editor or you've not got yours set up the same way as me, make sure you remember your namespace. And this isn't going to extend any test cases or anything like that, because this isn't actually a test class, it's a tool for loading the schema. And so we need a public static function. So using PHP Storm, I can just type PUBSF, hit tab, and then it will actually auto-complete that for me. And we called this method load. We said it will take an entity manager, so we'll actually use entity manager interface here. Entity manager interface. Okay, and so what did we say we needed to do? Let's go back to our schema tool and look at that update method again. So find update schema. And so we need our class metadata. We need to figure out how we're going to obtain that. And then what it will do, if we just have a quick look at the code, it says it gets the update schema SQL reading the metadata, gets a connection, and then it just goes through each of the update schema, each of the pieces of SQL, and executes it. And what that will do is actually create the tables, create the new fields, or whatever difference there is between the actual database which is comparing the metadata against. Okay, let's go back to our schema loader. We have our entity manager, so what we also need is our metadata, and the way we can obtain this is by using our entity manager. So metadata equals entity manager get, and what we need is metadata factory, and then off that we can call get all metadata. Okay, and this will get us the metadata that we need in order to pass in to our update method of our update schema method of the schema tool. Next though, we need our schema tool, so schema tool equals new schema tool. Okay, and as an argument, constructor argument, this takes the entity manager. Okay, all good so far. And then what we need to do is call update schema on the schema tool. So schema tool update schema, and then we need our metadata. Okay, perfect. And I think this should be all that we need in order for it to actually create our schema before each test. The way I'm going to test this initially is to actually create a class which extends, or create a test which extends this one, and we'll just create a test which just tests that true is true or something like that, just to make sure that what we've done so far doesn't throw any exceptions, because we've done quite a lot of work there and we've touched on some stuff which is fairly out of our control, such as entity managers and the schema tool, which is owned by the vendor, so we don't know that we've done all of this correctly yet. So a good way to test that is to actually just create a test which extends this and just run a very simple test, and then after that we can build on that and create stuff which is more custom to what we want to try and achieve. So what I'll call this is, we're actually going to be creating products, so let's actually create a products test, and then we can use that afterwards, can't we? So okay, and this will extend our database dependent test case, and all we want to do is just run a very simple test just to make sure that we're not getting any errors, because by extending this and by running a test which extends this, it means that we know that both the setup method is going to be called, which means it's going to try and get our entity manager and create the entity manager property, and we know it's going to try and load the schema in memory. So it's going to check all of those things for us. Okay, so public function, and we'll just go test it works. And this is what I do a lot of the time before I write any of my own tests. I just write one simple test case just to make sure, or just one simple assertion just to make sure that all of my setup is actually okay. Okay, let's go and run this. So we are going to say PHP vendor bin PHPUnit, and it's tests and products. Okay, one test, one assertion. So we've got this far. That's good news. It means that the work that we've done in our database dependent test case, even though we haven't confirmed yet that we've created a schema, we know that none of this has thrown any errors. So that gives us a pretty good indication that things are working well. And it's run both the setup and the teardown, and we've not seen any exceptions. So I think we're on the right track.
If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like YouTube to show you more of my content, all you need to do is subscribe and click the little notification icon. I release new recordings every few days. Details of my schedule can be found on the community tab of my YouTube channel homepage.